We read news every day. News that's informative, but rarely encouraging. The InterMountain Christian newspaper aims to change that. They present the news you need to know, from what's going on in your community to your world, with encouraging words, motivation, and the resources you need to make positive changes in your life. What is your local government doing that you need to know about? What's happening in your community you need to be a part of? Whether it's a story from your neighborhood, a national story, or an encouraging word, you'll find biblical issues of everyday life in the InterMountain Christian newspaper. InterMountain Christian News is produced and supported by the work and donations of individuals and churches. You'll find it at churches, Christian bookstores, by subscription, and online at imcnews.org. To find out more about supporting this local resource, go online at imcnews.org or call InterMountain Christian News in Boise, Idaho at 208-703-8688. The InterMountain Christian News, a voice sharing the truth on matters dear to people's hearts.
Are you tired of the secular news? Do you want a Christian view of politics? Do you want to know what is going on in your Christian community? Your wait is over. Welcome to the InterMountain Christian News Hour. Here is your host, Dr. Anthony Harper.
Dr. Anthony Harper here with the InterMountain Christian News, making a difference, and Dr. Jerome Corsi joins me today. Talk about his latest book titled Silent No More, How I Became a Political Prisoner of Mueller's Witch Hunt. So, Dr. Corsi, it's great to have you join me today. I know that I've had a previous interview, but it was several years ago, and a lot has transpired then. And you know, Dr. Corsi, there are a lot of controversies surrounding this Mueller issue, and the basic issue for not only me but a lot of Christians in America seems to be regarding hypocrisy in the judicial system. From a Christian perspective, Christ said, you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but there's a log in your own eye. And a lot of concerns I know for Christians, and I'm sure you would share this concern, is that hypocrisy in the Democratic Party. And Mueller is not inclined to investigate the Clintons or Obama for those many Christians would see treasonous behavior. So what would you, first of all, your perspective on hypocrisy issue, and then I want to talk about your book more in detail.
Well, I completely agree. I think the hypocrisy issue is a major issue, and for biblical reasons, as you point out. I mean, my faith is very strong. Mueller had 40 hours grilling me, some before the grand jury, but mostly in a unmarked FBI building in southeast Washington with in a closed conference room, no windows. They take away your cell phone and your laptop, and you and your attorney facing 3 of the special counselors, prosecutors, plus 6 to 9 FBI, and they go through this process where if you forget something, they threaten to throw you in prison for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. I mean, it finally came down to they wanted me to be able to identify a source that I had with Julian Assange, so that I would have known and did know in July and August 2016 that I figured out on my own that it was our 25th wedding anniversary. My wife and I and family were in Italy, and I figured out that Assange had Podesta's emails just by deduction. Had some time and really got to think about it, and it occurred to me that was the case, and I was right. But I didn't have a source that told me, and their whole theory, the special counselor, was that Roger Stone, through me, had been in touch with Assange and could coordinate how they wanted to release the emails to the detriment of Hillary Clinton. So, kind of to cut to the chase, when this all blew up and they were threatening that they're going to charge me with some kind of this offense of knowingly and willfully giving false information to the special counselor with an intent to deceive them and the FBI, which I did not do. They wanted me to plead guilty to one charge. That was my first day's testimony before I had looked at my 2016 emails. And there's some technical reasons why I hadn't done that. I wanted to deliver the computers in the condition they were when I quit using them. And at any rate, they allowed me to amend that testimony, but yet when it came to the plea deal, they wanted me to plead guilty to the unamended testimony. which is, I thought, completely fraudulent. I mean, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. I mean, I'm not going to stand in front of a judge and God and swear on a Bible to a crime I didn't commit. If I have to swear to a lie in order to stay out of prison, I'd rather go to prison for the rest of my life. I'm 72 years old. 1 year in prison could kill me. But I'm not going to lie before God, not to stay out of prison.
Mm-hmm. Some of the very serious issues that are going on, and I had read in one news report about Julian Assange denying that he'd leaked anything to you or other people that he's been accused of doing that.
Well, in fact, Julian Assange just a few days ago issued a formal statement from WikiLeaks of about 150 statements that he said would be false and defamatory, and one of them was that he made it very clear that Julian Assange and WikiLeaks had not been in contact with me, and he named me, Jerome Corsi, named me, and said no contact whatsoever about the 2016 election or any of the emails that had been stolen from the Democratic National Committee. I don't know Julian Assange. I've never been in touch with him or anyone related to him, directly or indirectly. And I'm not going to swear before God that I have been, because it's just not true. I did not get any information that led me to conclude that Assange had Podesta's emails. It was obvious to me because in July 22nd, 2016, Assange had dropped 40,000 emails on Debbie Wasserman Schultz out of the Democratic National Committee. I studied those emails and realized that they were out of the Democratic National Committee's email server, and whoever found those emails had to have seen Podesta's emails, but Podesta's emails were not really included in the Debbie Wasserman Schultz drop of emails, and Assange said he had more, so I figured they had to be Podesta's, because I studied Podesta for a long time. Podesta would have been the mother lode. That would have been, I thought, the really damaging emails, and I knew whoever got into that server, the email server of the Democrats, would have seen Podesta's and would have taken them first. And so that's what I concluded. And when it came crossways with the special prosecutor who has this theory of collusion, and I was going to somehow be the linchpin in their theory, they wanted me almost to lie to give them a source. That's how I could have gotten out. If I gave them a source, I wouldn't have any problems at all. But I don't have a source, and I wouldn't lie to give them one. And I'm not going to swear to a plea deal to a crime I didn't commit, especially when they allowed me to amend the testimony that they wanted me to swear I'd given to them with the intent to deceive them, which I did not do. I forgot a few emails.
Okay.
So, I mean, the whole thing, I think, is fraudulent.
There's a lot of concern of a lot of Christian leaders that are very frustrated with the Democratic Party, and also see that Mueller is sympathetic more to the Democratic side, which, talking about hypocrisy for a lot of Christians about a party that is been referred to as the party of death by Dinesh D'Souza, who I had an interview with. The question is about legitimacy of Mueller and others that are protecting Clinton and Obama.
Well, the thing that strikes me, and I've got a lot of respect for Dinesh D'Souza, and I fundamentally agree with Dinesh D'Souza's analyses. The part that I want to bring up is that this whole hatred of Donald Trump, and having now spent time, 40 hours over 6 sessions, 2 months, which I detail. Silent No More is a book that I've written, and I myself narrated the audiobook, and the audiobook and the ebook are available right now, including on iTunes for the audiobook, but on Amazon. But I dictated this because I want you to hear how it felt to go through this inquisition. The prosecutors hated, they demeaned my belief in God. Jeannie Reed, one of the prosecutors, said, "Dr. Corsi, you're asking us to believe on this flight over to Italy with your wife for a 25th wedding anniversary. God intervened, and you had a miracle, and God inspired your mind to say that Assange has Podesta's emails. I said, well, Mr. Reed, I don't really appreciate you ridiculing God. But if you're asking me if I figured this out myself, I did. And it was a matter of connecting the dots, simple deduction. You don't have to bring in God and divine intervention and make it sound preposterous because you don't believe in God, evidently. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm thinking there. I mean, this was all ridiculous. I mean, Aaron Zielinski, I read about this in Silent No More. Aaron Zielinski, I think the most arrogant of the prosecutors, when they finally blew it all up, he was saying to me, he basically didn't like my writings. He said he read all my books, or many of them, and studied my writings. I take a fact here and a fact there and a fact here, and I weave them together with lies. I mean, that's what he's saying, my writing, because he politically disagrees with it. He wants to characterize me as lying. And then he said, Dr. Corsi, you don't know the difference between truth and false. We know the difference between truth and false. I'm saying to him, I can't believe it, because, what it reminded me immediately sitting there was that this was the fundamental question in Pontius Pilate's interrogation of Jesus Christ. I believe it's in Matthew that Christ says, I am the truth, I am the way. That's what he's telling Pontius Pilate, and Pontius Pilate asked the very famous question, what is truth? Well, that's what Zielinski is saying. He's the arbiter of truth. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying, no, what Christ was saying was that God is the arbiter of truth. There is a divine law. There is a natural law that we live by, and that, then Christ is the truth, and we must live by the standards that Christ articulated in order for our lives to be true.
Yeah, I understand. It's such I would say, one of the hottest interchanges in Earth's history is between Pontius Pilate and Jesus, and there's a lot of concerns with Christians about fake news, and they believe that the mainstream media has no understanding of truth whatsoever. Definitely not a connection to Christ, and I want to talk a little bit more about that, but I want to let everyone know about this news source that I saw about WikiLeaks and Assange denying this contact with you and others. And this is a Washington Times report dated May 19th, 2017, but in that it says WikiLeaks director Julian Assange said on Monday that his anti-secrecy organization never provided election information to Donald Trump campaign advisor Roger Stone or to Jerome Corsi, conservative author and conspiracy advocate. And, this comment about conspiracy, labeling you as a conspiracy advocate, right. And the hypocrisy comes in for, I think, a lot of Christians, is that the true conspirators are Mueller and mainstream media and the Democratic Party. But
well, my encounter with the special prosecutor has made me seriously concerned. The next step of this hard left, which is like socialists that have taken over the Democratic Party, which is nothing like the Democratic Party when I grew up. It's not the party of John Kennedy. As I said, I'm 72 years old. I remember the old Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. The next thing they're going to do is they're going to outlaw the Bible and make it a crime to teach the Bible, because the Bible is, in many ways, gives basis for opposing this LGBT, whatever it is, agenda. And if you dare to say that, on biblical grounds, that marriage is a sacrament between a man and a woman, this is a holy bond that is intended for procreation of children, and this is what God intended. Well, if you dare to believe that, you could become a criminal because you don't bake a cake for a gay wedding, or you take some public stand where you basically, disavow same-sex marriage. That they're going to say that's just equivalent to racial discrimination. Well, I think they're fundamentally different. I mean, racial discrimination, I don't see that skin color has any reason or justification for discrimination, but I certainly think that God created two sexes with the intent to make them different and with purposes in divine law for having done so. And this is not just a amusement, do whatever you want to do as long as it feels good.
Oh, yeah, that is true. And there's so much frustration, Dr. Corsi, in the Christian community that I know, especially the evangelical community, about this issue, attack on Jewish, Judeo-Christian values. And, we are definitely in the age of a lot of unrest. A nation is very divided. And Dr. Corsi, I really liked President Lincoln's an assessment of America in 1863 in the middle of the Civil War. I hope President Trump will pay attention to what President Lincoln had to say. And in his assessment, for those that don't know, President Lincoln said that America is a nation that has forgotten God. We've become too proud and arrogant and self-reliant. And President Lincoln called for a time of national repentance. He quoted from Scripture, only of those nations blessed whose God is the Lord. And Dr. Corsi, hopefully a lot of Christians in America will, have their concerns heard by President Trump. And wouldn't it be something for President Trump to defer to President Lincoln on what will make America great again?
Well, I think President Trump has become a much more prayerful man. Mm-hmm. And I see signs of it in the White House. I see signs of it in his public statements. I think he has come in at this point in his life to see the responsibilities of the presidency as God deferred to, mm-hmm. A human being, and he's taking it very seriously. And I believe he understands that the values that we have in our Constitution and our freedoms that are defined in documents including the Bill of Rights and others are unique in human history.
They are.
And come from a understanding that these rights are not granted by the king or any state, but are endowed by God in us. They're inalienable. They're rights that God gave human beings. And the losing of the godly perspective, sitting there with these Mueller people and realizing how they didn't want to hear. I tried to raise the issue. I said, why don't you go get Julian Assange? He says that Assange did not steal the emails and get them to him. I mean, mm-hmm. the predicate of their case they have not proved, and they don't want to hear anything that isn't in their preconceived notions. Mueller's team of prosecutors, usually you've got a crime. You've got to have a body. You can't even have a murder case unless you have a body.
Yeah.
And then you find suspects. Well, they've already got a convicted criminal. Donald Trump is already, in their minds, convicted of treason. And the Mueller prosecutors are now out to look for the evidence that backs up their predetermined theory. And they're not interested in any evidence you might have that's exculpatory or that points a finger to Hillary Clinton or to the Democrats or to people they're trying to cover up and protect.
I just want to encourage, we talked about Dinesh D'Souza a little more. Dinesh D'Souza, as you said, really has a good feeling, understanding what's really going on in America. This agenda from mainstream media to deceive, agenda that undermines our values. And I know you've got a lot of great information, and looking forward to reading more your book in more detail. The book is titled "Silent No More: How I Became a Political Prisoner of Mueller's Witch Hunt." And about this book, what are some of the highlights that you would like to share with our listeners about?
Well, I think the key thing is, first of all, I narrated. We rushed out to get the audio book, also iTunes, and mm-hmm. the ebook, so it's available now. It's going to take us until probably March to get the books in the store. But this is a hour by hour. I wrote it first person. I'm saying that I'm now anticipating I'll be in prison for the rest of my life, and here's what happened. Here's how this I've never had any accusation of committing a crime. I don't have even a parking ticket. I've had securities licenses for 25 years and gone through all the rigor of examination of those licenses. Mm-hmm. And suddenly, because I meet Mueller, I'm now faced with being a criminal. Well, here's how it happened. And here's how the Mueller, I believe, is a crooked prosecutor, crooked cop. And this is the Justice Department of the United States. I want everybody to know and see firsthand. This interrogation is like a KGB. Next you go to the Gulag or the Gestapo. And I want people to understand that our justice system right now is in the hands of politically motivated actors who are willing to engage in criminal prosecutorial misconduct to get the testimony they want to impeach Donald Trump.
Those evidences, or that situation is very clear in Dinesh D'Souza's recent movie, Death of a Nation. And Dr. Corsi, I want to encourage people to read your book. I'm looking forward to reading it in more detail. And appreciate you joining me today. These are so crucial issues regarding America. And Dr. Corsi, someone would criticize me and other evangelical Christians for maybe accusing, for siding with you on this issue. But they're afraid of Mueller and Obama and the Clintons would be afraid to come on with me for me to interview them. They are afraid of these challenging questions regarding some spiritual issues.
Well, I'll put my life and my trust in Jesus Christ, as I have, I'd like to think, my entire life, and it's never failed me.
Mm-hmm.
And life does not promise to be easy. So we're going through, my wife and I, my family, one of the most difficult periods of our life, where the entire family is under investigation. Mueller's just subpoenaed my stepson, 40 years old, because he wanted one of my computers, and I allowed him to have one of my computers and put it back to factory and use it for his mother's business. I mean, it was no intention to destroy evidence. I have a complete backup of that computer.
Mm-hmm.
And, so nothing was destroyed, but Mueller wants to accuse me of obstruction of justice. They're desperate now because I wouldn't sign their lying plea agreement. They're going insane to try to find anything they can do to prosecute me. And so far, they're having a hard time doing it.
Well, I want to let you know, Dr. Corsi, a lot of Christian people are praying for you, and it's a blessing to talk with you about these very important issues regarding hypocrisy, about making it very clear to Mueller and others their responsibility to be about truth. And if we asked Mueller today, he might say that he is from a Christian perspective. I've heard from some others that he goes to a Bible study, but this behavior is opposes those Judeo-Christian values of, if he'd be willing to investigate the Clintons and Obama, then that would show his openness. But it seems like he's just on one track mind, a witch hunt, as you said, and and President Trump has said that he doesn't seem to want to be open to other discussions.
Well, what I can tell you is, from my experience, and my testimony on that is silent no more. Read the book and you'll see. I mean, Mueller's people actually called up Amazon and wanted a copy, and Amazon said, well, you can get the audiobook now and the ebook now. Why don't you buy one? They made the FBI buy a copy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is my testimony right now as to why the Mueller investigation is not America. This is not equal justice under law, and it's got to be stopped.
Yeah, I share, and many evangelical Christians share that concern. Something needs to happen. And so I want to encourage people to pray for you and for all of America, that our nation will not be divided, that we will be a nation to honor God again, as President Lincoln called for. For those that haven't read what Lincoln had to say, that's at the top of our website, imcnews.org, InterMountain Christian News. Just look for President Lincoln's picture. And I go to the White House tomorrow, Dr. Corsi, to bring up our Christian concerns about how to protect our Judeo-Christian freedoms around the world. And we definitely are experiencing a lot of attack on those freedoms, Dr. Corsi.
Well, you have my permission to discuss anything we've talked about today, my case, and CorsiNation.com is my website. And if people would visit it, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
And, I think these are issues that need to be brought to the president's attention, and I think he's already thinking about them himself. And this is a very dangerous time for our country.
It is.
Because, we've got to preserve First Amendment religious freedom, and it's in danger. And Mueller and his whole team have shown me that they have no respect for Christian values and are determined to get the evidence they want, whether it's true or not. I mean, anyone who would require that you swear to a lie, to a crime you did not commit in order to stay out of prison, that's the kind of plea deal a criminal would offer you.
Yes, it's a very serious concern. Dr. Corsi, we do have a lot of major issues happening in America regarding our religious freedoms, and God willing, President Trump will be able to do more to protect our Judeo-Christian values around the world. In addition to the attack on Christian businesses, regarding the Christian cake maker in Colorado. There's also the desecration of Jewish and Christian cemeteries around the world as well. So hopefully President Trump will meet with me this week about protecting those Judeo-Christian values. And we appreciate having Dr. Corsi joining me today. Your website again for people to know more information.
CorsiNation.com. CORSI Nation.com.
What a blessing to talk with you, and hopefully Hillary Clinton and President Obama will join me on our broadcast as well, but I doubt that they would have enough courage to do that, to answer these challenging spiritually based questions. So thank you, Dr. Corsi.
Well, God bless you and Dr. Harper, and thank you, and God bless your audience.
I think it's great to talk with you, and check out CorsiNation.com for more information. Thank you, Dr. Corsi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We read news every day. News that's informative, but rarely encouraging. The InterMountain Christian newspaper aims to change that. They present the news you need to know, from what's going on in your community to your world, with encouraging words, motivation, and the resources you need to make positive changes in your life. What is your local government doing that you need to know about? What's happening in your community you need to be a part of? Whether it's a story from your neighborhood, a national story, or an encouraging word, you'll find biblical issues of everyday life in the InterMountain Christian newspaper. InterMountain Christian News is produced and supported by the work and donations of individuals and churches. You'll find it at churches, Christian bookstores, by subscription, and online at imcnews.org. To find out more about supporting this local resource, go online at imcnews.org or call InterMountain Christian News in Boise, Idaho at 208-703-8688. The InterMountain Christian News, a voice sharing the truth on matters dear to people's hearts.